Hi everyone, this is Lilliana Anderson. I'm just here to read you a little excerpt from my book Confidante, Brothel. It's book one of a three-part series, so a trilogy of books. And I just wanted to read you a little excerpt from chapter 2 called Pussy Chatter and House Calls. This part is Pussy Chatter. When her health check results were in, Angeline received a call from Rebecca to confirm the details of her trial shift, as well as to discuss her working name. "I see that you've put Tiffany on your form," stated Rebecca. "We already have a Tiffany, so you'll have to choose a new name." Oh, Angeline was disappointed. She'd always loved the name Tiffany. How about Sophie?" Angeline offered. "No, that name is too young. What about Isabella?" Before Angeline could answer, Rebecca had already changed her mind. "No, your looks aren't exotic enough. You're too blonde." "Sharon?" Don't be ridiculous. That's a butch name." "Aha, I know, Diana. Diana suits you perfectly, and we haven't had a Diana here in years. I think that will do nicely." So Diana it was going to be, and Angeline used the name whenever she worked in the industry and kept it even when she became a madam in her own escort agency. On the Friday night of her trial, Angeline found herself sitting in a room with 5 other girls while they all waited for their first client of their shift. She had met them as she arrived, and they had introduced themselves in the change room. The previous shift hadn't finished yet, and they all stood around talking. Angeline mostly listened to the chatter of the girls. If you didn't know any better, you would think they were just listening to some girls around the office copying. When the day shift girls had finished and entered the room, the decibel volume went up by 10. It was a debrief about which new and repeat clients had come in. They shared some funny stories and spoke of clients that they would like to come back. Angeline just watched as she couldn't add anything to the conversations. The girls looked like any that you would see at a bar or a disco. Some wore lingerie, and others just wore a dress or a skirt and a blouse, but it was see-through, of course. They made Angeline feel welcome, and some of her tension fled. When it was time, the girls on Angeline's shift filed into the other room and said goodnight to the day shift. They'd been waiting for only 10 minutes when the lights flickered on and off, and all the girls stopped what they were doing and got into their seats. A tall, beautiful-looking blonde man entered the room. Angeline couldn't believe how attractive he was. She wasn't normally into blonde men, but this man really took her breath away. "Good evening," she smiled, not realizing that she was supposed to be silent. The other girls looked at her, and she shut her mouth quickly. The man stood, looking at the girls for what seemed like an eternity. Finally, he pointed to Angeline and said, "Okay, you." Angeline stood up, butterflies forming in her stomach at the thought of what she was about to do, and led him into the room she'd been given for the night. She was so nervous that her knees were knocking together. Her breathing quickened by the second. "Here goes," she said to herself. As soon as they entered the room, Angeline removed her dress. She was wearing a wraparound that tied up at the front. She thought it would be easier and more dramatic to take off, rather than a zipper, although she did intend to try out which clothes worked best. The man shut the door behind him and turned to her with a concerned expression on his face. "Listen, I don't want to cheat on my fiancé," he said. Angeline fixed a smile on her face while she wondered, well, what the hell are you doing in a brothel? But she said aloud, "Okay, well, what would you like to do?" "Well, if you would just lie on the bed with your underwear off and legs apart, I'll do the rest," he instructed. Angeline obligingly removed her underwear and lay down on the bed, legs apart, all the while wondering what he could possibly want to do to her. He knelt on the bed, and Angeline thought he was about to go down on her. Oh, this guy doesn't count oral as cheating, she thought. She could feel his breath between her legs and was waiting for his mouth to begin, when she heard, "Aren't you just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen?" It was said in the kind of voice you would use when talking to a baby or a puppy. What the fuck, she thought. Is this guy talking to me? She lifted her head to look at him and realized he was talking to her vagina. Never in her wildest dreams would she have imagined that her first client in a brothel would be a pussy talker. "And what have you been doing today?" he asked her crotch, as if he was actually expecting an answer. She wished she could conjure up one of those pussy farts as an answer, and she realized she was on the verge of laughing out loud. She bit her fist in hopes that the pain of the bite would make her body stop shaking. "Oh, look at you, you're so lovely." He then did 3 air kisses and continued his chatter for the next 20 minutes. What was originally very funny to Angeline had now become unbearable. She wanted to scream, "It won't talk back to you," but had to lie silently enduring his conversation with her own mute lips. Finally, there was a knock at the door that signalled there was only 5 minutes to go. Thank you, Lord, she thought. Her client sat up at the knock. Excuse me, he called to her, like she hadn't actually been there the whole time. Yes, replied Angeline, lifting her head so that she was looking at him and trying to keep her features neutral. I'd like to extend my time, he said. Holy shit, I can't take any more of this, Angeline thought, but instead she said, we don't actually do extensions for this sort of thing. It wasn't that what he was doing was bad or that it was hard work. The only work she really had to do was hold still and bite her tongue while he talked to her pussy, that he called Angel, funnily enough. He spoke about his day, his worries, and of course, this was all interspersed with him saying how beautiful her snatch was. It quite simply wasn't something she wanted to continue. Her client looked a little disappointed, but said okay, and he paid his money to Angeline. Oh shit, I was supposed to get that first, she thought as she gave herself a mental head slap. You don't think that would count as cheating, do you? He asked her. No, darling, not at all, she replied as she ushered him out of the door. And that's the end of that part. The next bit's house calls, which I might read for you later. That's my first time reading, so sorry if it was a little jittery. I really hope you enjoy reading the whole book of Confidante, which will be released on the 22nd of October through Amazon and Lulu in paperback. So thank you. I really appreciate you listening. Bye.